Afternoon. Such an overwhelming response. I love it. Thank you, Billy. So, welcome to Structural Pest Control Board meeting. We are going to jump right into it. We will try to get through as much as we can in efficiently a manner as we can, but making sure that we allow enough time for all the discussion appropriate. So let's go ahead and start off with Susan doing a roll call and establishing the quorum.
Darren Van Steenwyk.
Present.
David Tamayo.
Here.
Ronna Brandt. Here. Mike Duran.
Here.
Curtis Good.
Here.
And Servando Ornelas.
Here.
The record will show 6 of our board members are here and establish a quorum.
Excellent. So let's do flag salute. Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. So, public comment for items not on the agenda. I am seeing Billy come up. So please step to the table, and I ask that you represent your name and affiliation, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, my name is Billy Gaither. I own a Branch 3, Branch 2 company, and I'm licensed in Branch 1 also. But what I'd like to bring your attention here is a newspaper article dated March the 24th of this year from a local newspaper in Solano County. It's the Daily Republic, but you can see nice big headlines that says, the seller and the pest inspector may have liability for not disclosing serious rust problems. The letter from the well, it's a lawyer who writes a weekly column in response to inquiries from the general public on real estate matters. And so the letter to the lawyer is concerning, he bought a home that was built with steel support jacks holding up the beams in the sub area. And over the years they rusted out and the beams were sagging and whatnot. And his brother-in-law contractor estimates about $15,000 worth of repairs, and he wants to know who's responsible. So the lawyer goes on to talk about several different areas of either non-responsibility or responsibility. Talks about realtor and their responsibility on something like this. They don't have any responsibility because they don't inspect sub-areas. They rely on professionals for that. Talks about the home inspector who would carefully disclose in your report that they aren't responsible for anything they fail to disclose, but they can get away with it because they aren't licensed by the state. Then he talks about the pest inspectors, but we all know that's the Branch 3 WDO inspector. He says they're obligated to look for any organism which can consume a home. Of course, the typical pests are termites and the like, which can literally eat you out of house and home. Also on the list is a wood-destroying microorganism that destroys wood, but last but not least, rust. And he says, well, certainly rust is not an organism. It's a chemical process that does consume metal. And in this case, the pest inspector or the termite inspector undoubtedly crawled beneath the home looking for a host of potential problems. But in his conclusion, he states that perhaps the pest inspector and the seller would seem to be the chief culprits for liability on this. So my point is, Branch 3 WDO inspectors aren't responsible for rust problems. That's not a wood destroying issue. So I would like to give this article to Robert, to Mr. Lucas, and have him review it. And perhaps the board or Ms. Saylor could write a letter to this lawyer seeking a retraction of this, because it's a widely read article or newspaper in the county. And over the years, he's had several issues with the Branch 3 side of the equation, but this is the one that's really blatant and sticks out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I am Carrie Winbill Rojas. I am from the University of California Integrated Pest Management Program. On behalf of my colleagues, other researchers with the University of California, I wanted to request that an item be put on the agenda for the next meeting to have some further discussion about the research grant solicitation. My colleagues wanted me to voice some concerns they have about the predictability of the grants, and they have drafted a letter that they wish to submit and share with you and have further discussion. So I could talk about some of it now, or we could just perhaps put it on the agenda perhaps for next.
Okay, right now, since we are at public comment on items not on the agenda,
Mhm.
if you have something you want to submit, the board members can receive it.
Okay.
And review it later.
Okay.
But right now, we can't, they can't respond or interact or have any kind of discussion. This is just for public comment on items not on the agenda.
Great. So my colleagues are preparing a letter and they intend to finalize it soon and submit it to the board. And so perhaps it's something that can be considered for the next.
Right, and later we also have the agenda item for items for future agendas, but we can mark that down as a request now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other participants in this agenda item?
Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. I'm Peggy Byerly of the Department of Pesticide Regulation. This is essentially a minor DPR update, and therefore we did not approach Ms. Saylor for an official agenda item. We have had a lot of hiring of new county inspectors in the various counties in the northern half. So we have been approached to ask if we can do another one of our multi-day structural training for county inspectors in the northern. One of our places we used to use is no longer available, so we are currently vetting where we would do the demo station sites. But since it is a code mandated training, we will be probably at some point this summer approaching industry to see if we can get a branch 2-3 volunteer company and a branch 1 company. We have not started our board and DPR planning work group yet, but probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks we'll be getting those things going. So I'll have more of an update as the summer goes on about this, but I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. And also the supervisor, Patrick Falcon at DPR headquarters, who used to be the person who handled the structural billing invoices and things from the counties, has retired as of last Friday. I used to be in a regional office. I have transferred to a different position at headquarters. So I am essentially now going to perform the staff function that Kathy Boyle used to several years ago when she was with us. So now that I've relocated to Sacramento, you will be seeing me more regularly at the board meetings, which I'm very excited about. I was a structural inspector in LA County back in the day, and I really have not just a great respect and esteem for this program and the board itself and the agency that Ms. Saylor heads, but I'm looking forward to being able to be of more use in the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to make any comments for items not on the agenda? Okay, so hearing none. Item review and approval of the January 9 board meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments on that? Susan, did you want to comment on that or no? No? Okay. Does everybody get a chance to review the minutes? Any comments or corrections on those? Nope. Any public comment? Excellent. Can I get a motion to approve? Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Any more any public comment? Okay. So do we need to do a roll call? Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The EO's report.
So in your board packages are, of course, your licensing results and survey statistics. If you have questions, I can answer those.
I do. I've got a
Okay.
quick question for you.
Okay.
I noticed a what appeared to be a very marked or significant drop off in the passing rate for the field rep and the applicators test. Can you comment on that, please? Going from, last year to date was 46% for field rep, and this year to date, this year, same time monthly was 31%. And then the applicators going from 51% down to 37%. Those are those appear to be significant. And I've actually received several comments from several members of industry how something happened. And so I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
My only comment, Jen, would probably be just new exams being produced. I know with the applicator, we just produced a new exam and released it in January. Before that, the applicator exam had not been, a new exam had not been produced in 18 months. So it had been out there for quite a long period of time. Field rep, I don't know off the top of my head when a new exam came out with that one. Christina, do you? Okay. I don't have it off the top of my head when our new exam was produced for the FR. I can check that and get back to you. That's the only thing that really comes to mind. I don't have a better explanation for you.
Okay. That's just, I felt like I was asked to bring this up at some point because it is companies that are trying to staff for the summer this year compared to last year, they're finding it much more difficult to do so, specifically addressing the passing rate of the exam.
Dropped.
Yeah.
One thing that I discussed today and yesterday with Curtis is that probably timing of producing a new exam was probably not the greatest because with the applicator it came out in January, so that's kind of the time that industry is gearing up and having more people taking the test. It would probably be more beneficial to the industry if we release an exam later on in the year when you're not quite so busy, you're not trying to hire so many new folks. And that may have happened with the field rep as well. I'm not sure at the last new exam for the field rep.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. President, do we have adequate study material for the individuals taking the examination? I know months past that was a concern.
I'm pretty sure that we do have adequate material. I mean, there was a huge concern that we had about 40 study guides. Those 40 study guides have been reduced down to about 11, I believe. So we've really condensed it to make it more realistic for someone to study for those individual exams. I think what we have is sufficient.
Is there a possibility that as a board member I can obtain some of that information, even if I have to compensate or buy it myself?
The books are readily available on the web. So I don't see
The board may also request that, do you have OPES develop your?
Yeah.
So you can also request a closed session with OPES to discuss the exam. To go over how they developed that, what changes have happened, and what you'd like to see, and they'd be available to answer questions at that time.
Okay, we may. But I
And-
may be requesting that.
Okay, and OPES is in the room, and there's an agenda item later in the agenda so you may be able to ask some questions of them today. Right. Nothing confidential, of course.
I wanted to speak to this. As I recall, they're not study guides. What they're really reference materials from which
Yes, I'm sorry, Dave, you're correct.
yeah.
The reference materials where
So-
the exam questions are directly taken from.
And we were specifically instructed by our counsel at the time that we didn't have the authority and that
To
it
do
would
a
be
study guide.
actually unwise for us to develop study materials. And I wanted to ask Sabina if she's reviewed that advice and whether you concur or not. So
I was not aware of that advice, but I can locate it.
I would
or-
appreciate it, and it doesn't, for a subsequent meeting, because I know there was a lot of support from industry on that, and it was actually surprising to, I think, most of the board members that we couldn't really do that, and I'd like to get a updated opinion.
Sounds
on
good.
that. Thank you.
Sure.
You want to relive the study guide conversation?
Well,
Maybe. Okay.
no, I mean, it depends on what our counsel says. If she says, yeah, that was completely correct, then, because we were pushing back on the advice that we were given at the time, and if the advice still stands, I don't see any point in re-examining it. But if we're able to do that, it might be something that, and it's up to the rest of the board as well. So
Definitely.
So examination development, obviously that's an ongoing continuous basis, having subject matter workshops and continuously monitoring the exams and the questions and rewriting that material. Staffing changes, there's been a couple of changes since the last board meeting in January. We did have a vacant lead analyst position in licensing. That position has been filled. Melissa is actually in the room if you'd like to give a wave. This is Melissa Zanetta, and she was promoted to that position as a lead licensing analyst. Her position, she was on the applicator desk, so that position is now vacant, although she's continuing to do those functions until we fill that position. And one other staffing change we have is one of our investigators, Fred Bartley. He is in the Bay Area. He is officially retiring at the end of this month. And then we'll be looking into possibly recruitment for that position and maybe maintain that position in the Bay Area, maybe relocating that position down south. The only other thing that I have in here is the sunset hearing. Our sunset hearing background paper is in your board package, along with there were 11 issues that were identified. I thought most issues were pretty minor. A lot of the issues have already been resolved because we've been working on them since last sunset. Our sunset hearing was on February 26th. This sunset process was a little different from the last one that I experienced in that they expected the board president to be totally on board and do the opening comments and directly talk with the two committees regarding our sunset. So Darren, you want to talk about our sunset hearing that we had?
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I got a chance to see a bit more kind of peek behind the curtain, if you will, on the board's relationship with the department, and so actually the hearing itself, I don't know if anybody saw it or participated in it, but it was very short and direct and to the point. And so working with the department on addressing the specific issues and the talking points for those issues was actually was a relatively easy process.
Compared to the two programs that were heard before us, I think that we did an amazing job.
Yes, so they heard 3 boards that day. The first one lasted about an hour and 45 minutes. The second one lasted about 45 minutes to an hour, and ours lasted about 38 seconds. So it was so at that point in time they were ready for us just to move on. Yeah, just to be done.
Yeah. that's all I have for my EO update, unless you have questions for me.
Any other questions? Questions from the public? Very good. So moving on to the next item, update on Department of Consumer Affairs internal operational audit of the Structural Pest Control Board. Susan, did you want to take that one?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
So in your board packages, the Department of Consumer Affairs did conduct internal audit of SPCB's internal functions. For the last 3 fiscal years, the auditors were in our office for about half of the year at the end of 17. So they were auditing period of 15 through 17. That internal audit results are in your board packages. The auditors did find 4 like problem areas, things that they identified in our internal audit. I wanted to give you some context to that. So in looking at other programs, some of the other programs in DCA, they had up to 11, 18 issues that were identified in their internal audits. Some of those included not safekeeping of social security numbers. It identified that core information was being included in license files, and that information was not being properly protected as well. Some of the programs revealed that no continuing education audits occurred for like a 3-year period. So our internal audit in comparison, I thought was excellent. I was very proud of the job that staff have done during those 3 years. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any board member comments or questions on that? Any comments from the public on this agenda item? Okay, excellent. That's good to hear. So moving on, a regulations update on and possible action on 1970.4. So where are we at with that?
I'm going to turn that over to Sabina. She gets that one.
You guys can be mad at me. So I've been working with Dave on this regulation update and language, and and as well as working with Kurt, as many of you know, Kurt as previous counsel here years ago. We've been working together and trying to clean up the language, and I think Kurt and I both agree that it's a good opportunity to clean up the entire section and to clarify a lot of the language in there. And so we're going to be working and should have some language to bring to you at your next meeting in July, and hopefully reorganize the section so it's a little more easy to understand and follow. And that way we can take this opportunity to kind of do it all at once, if you will.
So you're right, so we are allowed to be upset at you then for this one.
You're
Okay, so when you say the entire section, you're talking about all of 1970?
No, point 4.
Okay.
Point 4.
Okay.
I think it's a good opportunity to kind of better organize it
Gotcha.
because there was multiple dwellings and it was a little confusing. And then there's a clarifying change for what commercial and industrial, how they are defined. And I think we came up with a better solution for that, saying it would be non-residential instead of a business structure.
Okay.
So that we did already kind of change, but we're also going to look at the larger structure of it and better organize it. Maybe move all multiple dwelling, or so it was called, to one section of it, and kind of just reorganize it, and so it's a little clearer.
Okay. So we have to wait more on that one.
You do.
Sad trombone sound. Okay, so is there what kind of questions, comments do we have from the board? Can we give the public the opportunity to throw tomatoes at you? Nothing?
Marshmallows.
Marshmallows. Okay. Okay.
I can't let Sabina take all the it's technically me who's working on the language too, so collaborative effort.
He gets the tomatoes, I get the marshmallows.
It's going
Okay.
to be a little more challenging. It's worded
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's not ideal. I agree with her on that.
Yeah, I get it. Once you start opening it up,
Right.
yeah.
And it's a good opportunity to clean it up, because if I'm confused reading it, there's not to say that I'm a genius at all, but somebody who's relatively familiar with the Practice Act, it was confusing a bit, and we've been talking a lot about it. And so it's a good opportunity to clean it.
Okay.
Billy Gaither again. On this specific item, do you intend to collaborate with DPR on the wording on this? And I'll just tell you why. Several years ago, I had a problem with a deputy commissioner in Solano County over her interpretation of this statute, which was incorrect, and I had to bring it to the board for a proper interpretation and clarification, and they had to write a letter to her regarding this. So I want to make sure that you're covering any problems that might come up with DPR on this.
I am hoping to cover all, no, you can't say all. We're just hoping to make it clearer and easier to understand,
Okay.
and overall, hopefully for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments? Okay, so hearing none, we will be moving on. Thank you, Sabina. Appreciate it. Appreciate the update. I know that this, as you know, that specific statute and topic is very near and dear to industry, and so we always appreciate hearing updates on that. So moving on to legislation. Susan, did you want take a couple and then
Sure.
we'll take a couple? Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So AB 2986, it appears that was just a placeholder. That bill has been gutted now and has nothing to do with the Structural Pest Control Board. Next is AB 2422. Darren, you taking that up?
Yeah, I'll take that. So, AB 2422 is Bloom. That is the Rodenticide Bill, or the Anti-Rodenticide Bill, or whatever, however we want to put it. And so current status is that this, it made it out of the first committee, the ESTM committee. It is going to be heard next Tuesday in the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. And after that, we will see what happens depending upon how it goes from there. Now, one of the things that I would like to ask this board, because it is consistent with 1687, that the AB 1687 that this board took a formal opinion on to oppose. I was wondering how the board would feel about taking a formal stance on 2422.
Yes, Mr. President, I firmly agree with you. Not only oppose, I think it should be that this board recognizes this as a public health and safety issue if this is removed from the toolbox of industry. I do not believe this type of bill belongs in the legislature. I think it belongs at DPR. So I firmly believe that, yes, this board should aggressively take actions that we oppose this in its current state.
Is that a motion?
I'd like to make that motion, yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second with Mr. Duran. Excellent. We have a motion on the table to discuss as a board. So, what is the board's stance on this?
One other follow-up to that is that if the board does approve such language or opposing this, that I'd like to have somebody represent us in hearing. I understand this is to be placed on calendar on Tuesday, being heard. So I'd like somebody be present from the board for that hearing.
Okay, so board staff.
Possibly so,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so we've spoken potentially with Susan, and so she and or Robert may be able to do that. So Dave.
Not so much on the merits of whether these products should be used or limited in any way, but I'm just concerned about whether this really, how this fits in with our mandate to, regarding consumer protection. And, given that it's, I do agree with the notion that DPR is a better place to make these decisions. Us taking an opinion on this, I don't know, I'm not that comfortable with us taking a stand on it, so.
Okay. Any other comments from the board on this?
I respectfully understand your concerns, but I do believe that foremost this board and our licensees are directly in charge of protecting property and health. So I absolutely believe that losing this is directly would limit their abilities to do their job, and I can't even imagine the outcome if the industry were to lose this product. So in turning that back around, I think the consequences could be very dangerous. So I do think we are charged with public health and safety.
And then also from a a consumer protection standpoint, this bill actually, in my mind, does the exact opposite of consumer protection, because this bill does not distinguish the difference between professional and private applicators. So all of the red tape and all of the steps that professionals would have to go through, the same exact restrictions are being applied to homeowners and private applicators as well. And so all of that, in my mind, again, goes against consumer protection, because it is limiting the consumer's tools and their ability to control rodents. Now, whether or not this board should be addressing that specific point is a separate conversation, but that's how I see this, one of the ways this bill is specifically addressing consumer protection.
What is the timing on us needing to submit this? I'm guessing because of the legislative cycle, it's timely now to do that. And are we proposing the really just submitting we did a letter, last summer?
Correct.
And I didn't look, in detail. Is this essentially the same thing? And are we talking about submitting essentially the same letter, or is there a need for adjustments due to differences between the two bills?
There is, I would say there is a little bit of adjustment that would need to be made, because this bill is a little, there is a couple of different, there's a couple of differences. One is with this one, it's the steps of going through getting approval from your public health department, and then having to get approval from a county ag to be able to use these products, as well as it specifically exempts mosquito and vector control districts, whereas the previous one did not, if my memory serves me correctly. And so I would, knowing what I know, because also it is a different bill, the legislature would want to see if we take a stance on, want to see the stance on this specific bill, not another bill. But for all intents and purposes, 90% of it is 90+% of it is appears to be the same.
So what are we suggesting if this, assuming that the board supports moving forward, what are we saying is going to be our process for developing a final letter?
Curtis, if I can speak to you, if I can speak for you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we would work on, we'd either take the previous letter and amend it, or create a new letter to have to either the author's office or the committee, or the new committee, by Tuesday, correct? Was that your intention?
Yes, it's to be heard Tuesday. So,
and so the idea would be to get the letter out before Tuesday.
Is committee chairperson Eduardo, the Zimmerman Eduardo Garcia?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recommend? I know I called him on this issue. I left a message with his office. He is from my district. Do you recommend that we inundate his office with phone calls and our thoughts on it?
I think that it would behoove this to use all potential. I'm hearing the lawyer give me the hook. You sure? Because you're about to.
Just move your mic.
Sorry?
I said she just moved her
You
mic.
just moved your mic. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, so there's a couple things going on right now. You have a motion on the table for the oppose, and I understand we're discussing. I don't want to get sidetracked with what we should do as individuals or individual board members also. So we have a motion as a board, whether we should write a letter to take a stance, a position on this as oppose. Just a reminder.
Thank you.
One thing that would, I supported it last time because I did recognize that in the hands of professionals that it's a very different story than just generally people who have no training at all, and that there's significant risk to that. One thing that I would like to see in a letter, that we support the notion that even industry members, and I'm not saying that we develop any sort of requirement, but that we support the notion that industry members who are going to use these should seek sort of specialized training or information, or we support the notion of there being available, or that industry should seek that out, that's specific to wildlife protection. So, to me, and I'm not saying making it a requirement, but just making a statement that it's a specialized area, and we support the notion of there being training that would help, that we support that industry members should seek that out. So.
I feel the industry has adequate training. I think the product is getting in the wrong hands and being misapplied and used in the wrong locations, and I think there needs to be further studies. And that's partly why I believe that DPR should be the front leader in this legislation, and shouldn't be left up to legislators. Clearly, by no means I will speak for myself and not this board, that I'll speak for PCLCs in general, because I know that's never their intent for other animals to be feeding on these carcasses. But I do not believe it's the industry's fault that a lot of this. There may be a few, but at the levels of which this is occurring, it's other types of farmers and being misapplied and misused. So I think there needs to be a great deal more research, and maybe additionals to find out who is misapplying those products and how and where, because I do not really believe overall it's the industry's fault.
Any other comments from the? I'm sorry.
So, what we're relying on is the label. I mean, you're referring to misapplication, and are you saying that we're very certain as a board here that the label is specifically already adequately protective? Because I know that that's not. And that's DPR's bailiwick. I mean, that's their responsibility. But even when one is following the label, that doesn't mean that if there's other additional techniques or thought that can be put into how things are applied, that can't improve the protection. That the label is the primary level of protection. There's additional things that if you think it through, and I would expect that there are some industry professionals that are better at thinking about that sort of thing. So it's not just the label that, it's does somebody have more specific training about the context in which this is applied. If you're in an urban area, maybe it's a very different sort of scenario than if you're on the edge of the urban area where you know, the problems that could occur, maybe take a little more thought, and just that sort of awareness of, you know, of extra steps that can be taken. So, you know, because I know that not all training is just, oh, just read the label, just follow the label. So that's what I'm getting at. I'm not casting blame, but I'd like to see some support for the notion that it would be helpful to have training available that's specific to wildlife protection. Maybe that could be, you know, so
Something this board does.
either this board or DPR or the ag commissioners or Fish and Game, something like that. Whoever it is, and I'm not saying that it's a requirement, but make that available. So.
No, I wouldn't object to that at all, but I do believe that the industry first and foremost goes through a great deal of training, and with IPM to think that the notion that these issues can go away with just strictly IPM and exclusion is a bit naive. And I do believe that majority of the industry and through the pest control operators and all their training courses and Target and Univar and all the providers, everything, the training first and foremost is regarding, you know, food, shelter, habitat, and everything else first, and last resort then is providing baiting. So I think there is very adequate training out there. Am I going to object to the notion that we could use more? Sure, I think we all could use more training. I can't deny that, but my main concern is taking this away at this point. What the consequences really could be. I think there needs to be additional research in this area and really find out the culprits and who are misapplying and using this product.
So, and I wasn't talking about the IPM aspects of it and conducive conditions. I was talking about just directly application techniques that are more or less appropriate for wildlife interface situations, and just being able to go, okay, in this situation, I'm going to do it this way within the label restrictions rather than this way. So just sort of an awareness kind of thing that could you know, still get the good results, but you know, sort of enlisting industry's help of, you know, just that little extra step. And that's the type of training that I was talking about. And once again, I'm just asking that if we're going to do this letter, let's include the notion that, you know, it would be helpful to do that. And we already included the notion that, you know, there should be additional research to find out what the real causes are. But I would appreciate it if we could have a nod to context-specific training on application techniques that could be helpful. So
It's interesting. Yesterday I was with PCOC and we were over at the Capitol and we were meeting with a legislator, one of their aides. And very interesting, and he informed me that he went out on a raid on illegal pot farms. And these illegal pot farms, for those who are not aware of it, apply this kind of rodenticide all over the place, not any kind of bait stations, and literally have boxes of it that they're misapplying and just throwing it around, protecting their groves. And I mean, we're talking, when you see the amount of bait that an animal would have to eat and ingest is enormous. So the only way that they you know, like a coyote, I forget how many rats they would have to eat. It's enormous amounts. And I'm not saying they couldn't ingest it and have that in their system. They get hit by a car and then says, oh, it's a rodenticide issue. I think before you go to this level, we banned, I think the scenario would be like taking antibiotics away from a doctor at this point. It's ridiculous, it's careless, and I think we're on the verge of public safety. And I think there's other avenues that should be explored and let the professionals handle this. It's particularly at DPR and find these facts and verify them.
I'm just asking to add that one concept to this, and then I'd be willing to support us taking position on it. I'm not saying that I'm opposed, that I'm dead set against the letter. I'm just saying that I would appreciate it if we would include that concept in there, and then I'd be willing to support the letter.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
I have one.
Please.
Dave, I respect you highly. I don't agree with you on this issue. I agree with Curtis Good. I've been applying this pesticide or this rodenticide for over 40 years. I can't imagine, I was trying to think here, just how much more training you could give me. You know, if you put it in the containers, you know, and the rodenticide boxes, bait boxes that they have that are tamper-proof. You know, Curtis is right. There's individuals out there that are just going out there and throwing them out in the field, and that's why we have the problem that we're having. And we can't, you know, get this off of the market, you know, but we do need to control the individuals that are actually using it and applying it not in the proper fashion. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Excellent. So we have a motion on the table. We have a second. How should we vote for this?
Could we read what is the motion?
Or are you going to make a friendly amendment to that, to add that, what you wanted?
I suggested it. I don't sense.
That there's love there?
Well, I'll offer that up as an amendment then.
That you want to say, hey, let's focus, that we really want it, we're committed to supporting and taking care of our wildlife, or something to that effect?
That we support the notion that training on just on the we support the notion that it would be helpful to have available to industry training that's specific to the protection of wildlife, where that's, you know, an important consideration due to the geography. So I would like that to be considered as amendment. So I would move that we amend it to include that.
Mr. President, I will accept that amendment, or however you refer to it. I think it's not necessary, but I'm willing to go with it. I think additional education. Yes, I'll go with your amendment, please.
Okay, so now we have to get the second to approve that amendment. Do you approve that amendment?
Yes, I'll second that amendment.
Okay, so the motion is for the and I don't have it written down. I'm going to make it up as we go along. But to take a stance to oppose AB 2422, to write a letter to the author's office stating that opposition with a specific statement in there, supporting the notion that industry members, you know, seek out training for specific wildlife protection, or the specific influence that this product would have on wildlife protection. Am I correct in that?
And I'd say not that we expect industry to seek it out, but that we support the notion that wildlife context-specific training should be made available to industry members who are going to use it in situations where that would be appropriate.
Most importantly, the bill is to oppose.
Yes.
And it should be in the hands of DPR.
Yes. Okay. So can I call for a vote?
Do you guys also want to include in the motion that somebody from staff will be attending that?
Yes, that was part of it.
And who's going to?
Yeah, that was
write?
already, that's right. So right now we have a motion about the board official board position and what will be included in the letter. That usually staff writes it in conjunction with, and the president will review or draft it together, or some, I don't know what you guys usually do.
Make it up as we go along.
There you go.
Okay. Any other last opportunity for public comment on this motion that's been amended? Okay. So can I call for a vote? I'd like to call for a vote.
Okay. Darren Van Steendwyk,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Rhonda Brandt, Mike Duran,
Yes.
Curtis Good,
Yes.
and Servando Anelius.
Yes.
Fantastic. So we will work on the letter and get that in to the author's office in time. Okay, so next bill is 2816. I'm going to go ahead and take that one, Susan. So AB 2816, Marashucci's bill. So this started out originally as a ban all pesticides in all schools bill. It has now been amended. One of the key opponents of this bill was LA Unified School District. They felt that bill was not quite appropriate for them. So now it is a study bill. So now that bill is to direct DPR to try to measure or quantify the impacts of the Healthy Schools Acts. The Healthy Schools Act of 2000 and specifically Healthy Schools Act of 2015 to see have those been effective. So that's where that bill stands. I don't necessarily know if we need to take a stance on that bill. Okay. SB 1481.
So SB 1481 is in your board packages in its current version. SB 1481 is to be our sunset bill. I talked with my contact person at the Capitol on Monday. She was hopeful that the last remaining amendments from the Act Review Committee, which there's about a dozen, they've already been presented to her, vetted with her on the Senate side along with the Assembly. She was hopeful that all those amendments would be amended into the bill by yesterday or today. So that should happen very soon. Along with our sunset dates will be included in here, and we've been recommended to be extended for 4 additional years. So.
Excellent. So I would assume that we don't need to take a stance on that bill because that. No. Do we anticipate any opposition to that bill?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. No, I think this is huge because it is going to get the last of the Act Review Committee's recommendations, where they worked on that project for 4 years, Curtis? Yeah, maybe 4.5, 5 years. So they have accepted putting those last amendments in there.
Excellent. Any comment on any of the legislation that we were discussing? How about public comment? Excellent.
Once 1481 gets amended, then I'll send it out to all our board members for your information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So the next item, the discussion of the board's annual budget and possible action regarding a WDO filing fee increase. So Susan, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So I've included in your board packages budget projections for the next couple of years. Also, I wanted to point out, as my cover memo indicates, one of the issues that the Sunset Background Committee had in our background paper was item number 5, and that's the board's fund condition. Projecting for long-term, our reserves, our monies in reserves is lowering, it's dropping. They recommend that we have like a 6 months reserve, and in projections, we're projected down to 1 point, I don't know, okay, down to 1.1 in the future. So what I have in your board packages is we have the language to 8674. So 8674 is our statute governing the WDO report filing fee. In statute right now, that cap is $3 per activity fee. And then I also have in my recommendation for your consideration is to change that cap from $3 to $5, so that in the future we have some flexibility to come back and do a regulation change should it be needed in the future sometime. I would expect that to be maybe long-term in the future, not relatively recent in near future. And then also in your board packages is CCR Section 1997. This regulation is what actually establishes the WDO fee. So that WDO fee in statute is $3 right now. So in regulation, we have it at $2.50 per activity. The last time that WDO fee was increased was in 2010. So I'm recommending that we increase that WDO fee from $2.50 to $3 per activity. And hopeful that we can get that effective July 1st of 2019. That would increase our monthly reserves by about 1.3% per year, which would assist.
Okay, so the cap would go from 3 to 5, but the actual filing fee would go from $2.50 to $3.
Correct.
Okay.
I was recommending just the 3 to 5 just for long term in the future. If we can get that in legislation, it would give the future of the board some flexibility should there be some reason to make another regulation change in the future sometime, so that we're not at the actual cap right now that's in statute.
Council, do we need 2 separate motions on this?
If you're going to accept the regulatory language today to give the authority to the executive officer to go forward with a regulation packet, yes. And then you have if you're looking to authorizing her to work on the statute in, yes. So you can take them each one at a time.
Okay, so do we have somebody can pick one, have a motion, and we can talk about it. But do we have a motion to let's do with the cap first? Oh no, the regulation first. I don't pick one. Doesn't matter to me.
I move to authorize the moving forward on the changes to the regulations to increase the fee from $2.50 to $3.
And you would authorize the EO to begin that regulatory process and to notice this.
And of course, I would authorize the executive officer to whatever you said.
And if no adverse comments are received, and she has all that authority to make those non-substantive changes.
Okay, I will include that in my motion.
Very good.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion from the board?
So we're raising somebody's, who's ever filing for it, whoever out in the public, you're raising what they have to pay to file.
So
I don't have a whole lot of common sense, so common sense, make it common sense to me. Maybe I don't agree with that.
okay,
Help me.
you want to briefly explain?
What this is a filing fee for WDOs, which is wood destroying organism reports, which we've always have had one, at least that I can recall forever. It has gone down. It's been bumped up at times depending. What I would like to also comment, and Susan can correct me, that probably about 90% of the activities and enforcement that this board and has oversight is in regard to WDO. So it is justified that probably majority of the fundraising, that is probably the simplest area to raise revenue quickly at a small fee.
It is based on the number of WDO's activities that are received per year. Servando, the board receives about 1.3 million WDO activities per year. So just raising it a small amount by 50 cents will help the board sustain their revenue in reserve.
And it's paid by
Licensee.
the licensee, not directly by the public, of course. Yeah.
In a sense, it goes back as we charge our fees accordingly for inspection fees.
Eventually, the public's gonna pay it somewhere.
Sure.
That's the bottom line. I'm not too bright, but I can see that.
We do charge a fee. Every time we do a termite inspection of a piece of property, we have to charge a fee. Or some companies don't.
So any other comment from the board?
No, I agree that's a fair price to charge. You know, we've been at 250 for so many years, and I
8
think that
years.
the increase is
Mhm.
it's adequate.
Okay. So comments from the public.
What's the effective date?
According to this, it'd be July 1, 2019. Allowing everything goes through and happens the way that it should. And Sabina doesn't find something wrong with the language that she needs to kick back to us.
And you'll see this again when we notice it, and we'll have a better idea of an effective date. We'll probably leave it blank or with hopes of a July 1st, 2019 effective date, but it has to work its way through our department and agency and the Office of Administrative Law also.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a vote.
Darren Van Steenwyk,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Rana Brand, Mike Duran, Curtis Good,
Yes.
and Servando Ornelas.
I don't know if my heart's totally in it yet. So I think I'll abstain on this one. I don't think I'll vote yea on this one.
Passes. It passes.
Correct.
Okay, so now can we get a motion to deal with the legislative side of increasing the cap? Now, this is not actually increasing the fee itself. We've already dealt with that. So this is increasing the cap from 3 to 5, the potential fee, the cap from 3 to 5. Can I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got it,
Mike and Dave. Mike and Dave.
and the motion also includes everything that Sabina's about to tell us with regards to directing EO to
Seek a legislator.
to seek legislation.
Legislation.
And we good? Okay. Any board comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's really important for for the board to be able to collect the fees that are necessary to serve the public efficiently, and then also to not impede industry in doing their job. And if we're not collecting enough money, and if we get stuck with, okay, if we don't increase the cap, it takes a long time to get legislation through, depending on the priorities of the legislation, regardless of what the merits are. So I think it's important to get this in place ahead of time. And I just want to make sure, that it's understood that this doesn't authorize the actual change in what we're collecting. That's actually done through the collection, through the regulation similar to what we just authorized, and that needs to be linked to what do we really need to do this efficiently, and to, because if we don't do this efficiently, then that slows the whole process down. It doesn't serve the public well. In fact, it probably is detrimental to consumer protection to have that drag out. So if we don't have enough money, it's all going to take a lot longer, and that does not serve the public well. And then also it's an unnecessary burden on industry. So that's why I'm supporting this.
Explain to me unnecessary burden on industry. How?
Well, if the department is not, or if the board is not collecting enough fees to timely process the paperwork that comes in, that's just going to gum things up. If we don't have enough money to keep the bodies in the seats, to make sure that the paperwork goes through on time, then that's going to be an unnecessary burden on industry. And then it could also, and I believe that those WDOs are something that the public really sort of depends on to have access to know what's the actual situation in those houses that were inspected. Is that?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
So if we gum that up, then the consumer's not protected as well. It makes transactions more difficult. So we're making, you know, like if somebody's trying to sell their home and we're slow because we don't have the resources, then the public's not served well, and somebody who wants to buy that house may not be adequately protected because they don't have access to the information that they need. So
Yes, Mr. President, I would further comment that we are a totally self-funded board. We take no funds from the general fund whatsoever.
I think where we're thinking about, you know, the types of jobs that we're talking about, I mean, you know, minimum of hundreds of dollars and then many thousands of dollars of work, and to add, you know, 50 cents to the fee that's eventually going to impact the people that are engaged in a transaction or depending on good work, you know, just the house that they're staying in, that I think most people would probably pretty gladly pay an additional 50 cents. So, or $2.
You're oversimplifying that one, but I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Just to further add to this, I think you may be thinking that the industry may oppose this. It's actually the industry that went before this legislature back in the 1930s and asked for proper regulation. So industry actually wants fair and balanced enforcement. So industry typically expects this board and the staff to do a proper job and fair consumer protection, and it does balance the field. And I think that's why you don't see anybody standing up in this audience here opposing any of this, because they do expect us to perform that job.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, from the public. Excellent. So we have a motion and a second. Let's call for the vote.
Darren Van Steenwyk,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Rhonda Brand, Mike Duran, Curtis Good,
Yes.
and Saranda O'Neill, yes.
Excellent. So moving through the agenda, update and possible action on the branch one exam, occupational analysis, cost and logistics. Before I pass this over to Susan, I'm going to say that this is actually, these occupation analysis are extremely important for our industry, because this is what one of the key things that OPES looks at when they create our exams. And so, this not only branch one, but all the occupation analysis and getting industry participation in that is extremely important.
Yes, absolutely. The reason why this agenda item is on here is because specifically branch one is we've been having some difficulty doing recruitment. So I kind of wanted to bring it to the board members' attention. I've been brainstorming with my staff about some things that we can try and do. Also, I've asked staff here from Office of Professional Examination Services to maybe give you some ideas and things that we can work on as well in order to get more participation for the branch one to be able to complete the occupational analysis for field rep and operator. The last time there was an occupational analysis for the branch one category was in 2008. So Shanna and Heidi, you want to come up? So we have Heidi Linzer here. She's the chief of Office of Professional Examination Services. And Shanna, I'm going to butcher your last name.
LaRusia.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to them for the time being.
All right. Good afternoon. So we did some research for you for the last time that we worked on your branch one occupational analysis. Shanna can give you those details. For last time we did branch one, how long it took.
Well, for branch one, we looked it up, and it was a start date of 2002. And it didn't get finished until 2006. It was actually published, just because the project deadline was put on hold due to lack of technical and financial resources. was a note that was put into the validation report. So it sounds like they were probably having some of the issues that we're running into right now. Right. So 4 years is typically not ideal, obviously. So right now, Susan's right. We are brainstorming. We're brainstorming at OPES. We're brainstorming with board staff as well, trying to figure out some solutions to our recruitment issues.
Looks like Board Member Good would like to say something.
Yes. I applaud you in your efforts because I know it wasn't any lack of what you guys have done. It's just industry not following up. I do apologize because I did hear about this and I did try to recruit some individuals. Unfortunately, it was at the very bitter end of that and we weren't able to do that. What I would share with you, and I've had further discussions is even yesterday and last night, is that the fumigators from like this period now through the end of the year, through even November and December, is really when all those individuals are extremely busy. So I think our best opportunity to bring recruitments in would probably be January, February, maybe even into a little bit of March, early March. That's when those employees have their least amount of work. And if there's any fumigators or anybody else that would comment on this, that'd probably be greatly appreciated. I would love to have a hand in the opportunity of assisting you with that recruitment because I was not aware of that it's been this many years because there's been so much change in the fumigation industry since that period that I think it is kind of negligent on this board's part that we don't have a more accurate test available for them at this time. But but I am very aware of your recruitment process and what you did and the lack of individuals applying for that. And I will apologize on their behalf of that. I wish they would take it more serious. I was talking with Susan earlier that there are some real hurdles with that part of the industry and getting individuals. But I think as maybe I don't see anybody here from PCOC, but we can certainly aid in getting bodies there next time for you. It's very, very important.
We appreciate that. Having industry support is key. So
Yeah.
that we hope that will help this time around. And is there other things that the board is considering as far as paying? Does more money help?
What's the opportunity of having one of these classes maybe in Northern California, Southern California, or is that feasible? Instead of bringing everybody up here, is the fee would be less to send your staff down south for 2 days than
We have
then
looked into that. We can make arrangements to work down south if that will help.
It looks like that will, Heidi, because majority of the fumigators, Curtis, are around LA, San Diego, that area, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably where 50% of the fumigations take
Right.
place. So
Are
that's where you have
taking
your,
place,
your
yes.
biggest
So we can do that.
opportunity. Yeah, maybe even 80%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, most of it's down there.
And we're only looking at 2 workshops, so it would only be 2 times we would be in Southern California. That is something we talked about. We just need to find a place. I was going to talk to board staff about finding if you have any satellite offices. If not, we have other DCA programs who are willing to help out with that.
I see Ed in the room. How flexible is the state on sites? Does it have to be what kind of facilities can they be?
Well, I'm assuming that you want a secure facility or.
No, this isn't because it's occupational analysis. We wouldn't be talking about test questions or anything.
Oh, okay.
So that makes it easier.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just need a conference room.
Okay, so there would be no objections if something like this could be performed at Univar, if they volunteered a location, or Target Specialty Products, if they had a facility for you? Is that
Yeah, that would
Probably.
be okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And how many individuals do you need at each one of these? 10 or 12?
8 to 10?
8
to
to 10.
8 to 10. Exactly.
8 to
Yeah,
10.
8 to 10.
Okay.
8 to 10?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
so
ideally, 2 different groups.
2 different
with
groups, right?
a little bit of overlap, okay, but not the same
Right.
individuals at both groups.
okay.
So about 20 to 25.
Right. And what kind of time period between these two analysis? I mean, you're talking.
2 months, Shanna? Is that?
I think so.
Well, I know we had one scheduled for December and we had a second one scheduled for February and we had to cancel both for lack of participation. So about
We did.
2 months.
2 months would be fine. And we actually had discussed starting in November, December of 18 But after what you said, we can move it to January, February of 19. If you want to do January of 19 for the first workshop and then March of 19 for the second, do you think that would work better?
You know what? I'll put this out there in the industry and get some better feedback before we come back to you with exact dates. I don't want to speak if they say, hey,
Right.
we can do something for you,
Mhm.
particularly with this flexibility of now you coming down south. That may make a huge difference. And I can invite several different people to open up their facilities possibly for you. So you just need just a kind of a small conference room,
Yeah.
just
fit
one
12
single
people.
room, right?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other
And
like?
we can't do things on paper. We usually do a PowerPoint presentation, but that can be on paper if that's not available. If it's not available to have
Most of these facilities would have
would have a
PowerPoints.
setup
Screen and
for a
everything,
screen.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And before we do the workshops, we have the first step in our occupational analysis is interviews, telephone interviews. That's another thing where we need people to assist us with just talking to us on the phone for an hour or so
Prior.
Not the same people. This can be a different group of people.
Oh, a different group.
Right.
Okay.
Or it can be some who are willing to do both. But this is just people taking an hour of their time to talk to us on the phone about their work.
Oh, okay. Is that something you can do? Can we start that this year?
Yes, if you think
Yes.
they'll be available. So if we did that in November,
Right,
December,
in November.
and then moved into the workshops in January.
Do you think that would work, Curtis?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can definitely make something happen there for you.
Okay. And then Heidi, Shanna, survey result, I mean, completing surveys, is that like the next step? Is that after the workshops? When is that
It's
process?
like after the interviews.
After the interviews?
Mhm.
Okay. Is it possible to have our continuing education providers complete surveys? I mean, I would think that they would have a lot of knowledge.
Are they licensed? No. Are they licensees?
They may be licensees, but just completing the occupational analysis, would that be okay as far as surveys?
Well, the survey is going to go out to all licensed people.
Individual FRs and OPRs.
That's
Right.
correct.
Okay. So then they should be getting that information regardless then,
Mhm.
in each of the two
Yes.
categories. Okay. I also thought, Curtis, that we might be able to start targeting attendees that attend the Fume School in UC Riverside and UC Berkeley every year. Maybe trying to get some information out because there's a fumigation school that's conducted every year in UC Berkeley and UC Riverside where it's fumigators. It's a fumigation school, all-day course. So I thought we might be able to target individuals that are attending that as well. Maybe have flyers available. I don't know when the next one is. UC Riverside is November, but I don't know. Do we know when UC Berkeley is? I'm sorry, Kathy? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Okay. Well, maybe that's something we can try and do as well.
To start the fume schools back up. There hasn't been one in Northern California for about 4 years. And I think in Southern California, it's been a couple of years since the last one.
Southern California, we did one last year.
Right,
Hosted-
right.
Hosted by AgriTurf.
Right.
UC Riverside, so Ridge Records would be the contact to get that.
We can assist you with materials, or do you have from the previous branches of, informational materials that you could put out there?
Okay.
Other-
I'd be willing to offer my facility. It would easily accommodate the amount of people you're suggesting unless council has thoughts. Okay. It would be available to you. And we're in Irvine,
Okay, thank you.
right by the airport, 5 minutes from
Great.
the airport.
That might be a great location because then you might be able to get LA and Orange,
Mhm.
San Diego counties all to participate without traveling a long distance. So we thought that might be a great ideal location.
Do you have any preference for what days would be preferable?
It's your room,
No.
Monday through
Okay.
Friday.
But for this industry, is there any days that are better that you know of?
I mean,
Let
they
me
usually
get some
do-
feedback. It'd probably be during, probably Mondays are usually very busy. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
Curtis, they were asking if it'd be better if they, usually workshops, Heidi and Shanna, or Tuesday, Wednesday, but they were thinking if they had to do a Friday, Saturday, they could.
We can do any day. If you tell us what days work better, that's what we'll work with. So that's why we're
I said
asking.
let's get some feedback from industry
Yeah.
Okay.
before we commit to that.
Usually a slower day because it's usually just ups and no downs.
You said Thursdays?
Tuesday.
Tuesdays. Okay.
Okay. And the other suggestion we have is for when you do send out the survey, if the board can offer CE credits for filling out the survey. A lot of boards do that to help with the survey response.
Okay.
Does that help?
So the content of the survey is going to be what? I'm just concerned about whether it's appropriate for us to offer CEs if somebody's just providing us information rather than receiving information. So
Well, the survey asks them what to evaluate tasks that they do in their job, how important the task is, and how frequently they perform the task, and how important the knowledge is that they use to do their work. Also, the workshops, we do discuss a lot of, this is what we discuss, what people are doing in their job and industry standards for what they're doing. And most of the boards are giving subject matter experts continuing education credits. They do learn a lot from talking to each other. It's just, I mean, like going to a conference, you learn a lot. We review the laws related to their profession, and for a lot of them, that's, informational. So boards do give CE credits and for filling out the survey as well, because they're having to evaluate their work, and that's up to you as a board to give that.
as long and I'm not opposed to it, conceptually. I just wanted to make sure, and it sounds like there's plenty of precedent for it. And as long as is concerned that we might be told no, it's not really appropriate, but it sounds like we're fine with that. So
It's up to you and the way your regulations are written about your CEs and how much discretion you have with those. So.
it provided that the law supports it, I'm totally in support of it. So
Okay. And I will have to take a look, Heidi, because of course we give credits for the workshops, but I don't know about completing a survey and those type of activities.
Heidi, can you remind me, what is the fee that the individuals receive for attending?
That's a good question.
$150 per day.
$150. Oh, okay, that's pretty fair.
So we think that's
Yeah, and-
sufficient? Okay.
An average SME to come to Sacramento and attend the 2-day workshop, it averages about $1,000 per person.
Right. So if we had it down there, that'd be, because you don't have to probably. No airfare.
Right, no
You wouldn't have
airfare.
to
Probably
house 'em.
only vehicle rentals and hotels possibly.
Maybe, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing that I was thinking of too is trying to do some outreach at the fumigation and enforcement programs quarterly meetings that they have. But I wasn't sure. I know we get a few fumigators in the room. Curtis, Darren, can you tell me what you think about trying to get some information out at those meetings as well?
No, that would be absolutely your prime opportunity. Maybe, yeah, you bet. I think Ed just stepped in back in the room, but those are month. Are the fumigators group? Well, you're not part of that. Are you part? Are you? Yeah. Yeah. Let me get some more information because those are pretty much monthly. That would be a very good time to share that, and we could definitely do some great deal of networking.
Kathy, do you have any information on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the PCOC one.
I'll take both.
The Southern California Fumigators group is a group that meets pretty much monthly throughout the
okay.
year.
And I was thinking about the quarterly fumigation
Oh.
enforcement programs meetings, but both is better than not.
So the answer is yes. We'll take
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Take both, yeah.
Okay.
It sounds very promising. We appreciate all your support.
Well, thank you for what you do. It's important. I'm disappointed to hear it's been so many years because a lot of changes occurred in those last, 12 years, 10 years?
Right. Well, since we came back to DCA in 2013, we've worked on getting the occupational analysis done for all the other categories, and I have continued to push back and delay the branch one because of past experience and trying to gain participation, along with the mere fact that that's our least population of licensees as well. So we have the occupational analysis updated for field rep branch 2, field rep branch 3. We have the OPR branch 2 finished and OPR branch 3 is in the works, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it really is time that we try and get this done. So
Yes, and we appreciate all your help, Susan, with you and your staff helping with all the recruitment issues that we know you face for all of the branches. So that's worked really well, and you guys are doing really good as a board to put this as a priority to make sure you're in compliance with BMP Code Section 139. So not all boards are, and you're working towards that, and we want to commend you for that.
Heidi, do you want to elaborate on that BMP code section and what that requirement is?
139. So BMP Code Section 139 requires that all boards do an occupational analysis for all of their license classifications every 5 to 7 years. So you're right that we are behind on the branch 1, but we have been staying current on the branch 2 and 3. So that information is compiled where the last date that boards did their occupational analyses. That's compiled by our office and sent to the legislature every year. So, and following the occupational analysis, boards are supposed to update their examinations to make sure that examinations stay current so that they're fair to licensees.
Is there a consequence or is there some type of timeline that if the analysis isn't done within, say, a 10-year period, what's the worst case scenario?
Susan is nodding her head.
The exams can be challenged and permanently suspended until we get that accomplished.
Why'd you have to say that aloud?
Well, okay, so we need participation.
Excellent.
But it looks like we're on the right track. We already have a location, and I know you guys are committed to trying to help us get people in the room, so.
Excellent.
And it also helps your industry to have fair and valid exams so that it's more effective to get qualified people into those jobs.
Do you have more questions for them, board members?
Any more questions from the board? Excellent. So,
Heidi, Shanna, thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
thank you. So updated and possible action on the, I'm sorry, is there any public comment on that agenda item? Please come forward and state your name and affiliation.
My name is Larry Hobbin. I'm an owner of Ace Professional Termite Pest Control Training Courses in Orange County. So if you need an alternative to Curtis Goods' place of employment, I also have a classroom that can accommodate 40 students. So if you want to do one at Curtis, one somewhere else in Orange County, we're literally just 15 minutes away from the airport.
Excellent.
So I offer that to the board.
Appreciate that.
The other thing is, in the past, when we have had the call for people to come up for branch 2 and branch 3, myself as an operator and an owner of a continuing education provider, I have not been allowed to come and write questions for the state. Now, am I understanding that for branch 1, if I'm not a branch 1 licensee, that I could qualify to go and sit and write questions?
This process we're talking about is not writing questions. This is developing the scope of what will be covered on the examination.
Okay.
So anyone can participate in this process.
They don't have to be licensed.
I mean, they have to
as
be
branch-
licensed, I'm sorry, as long as they're
In the branch
licensed.
1.
In the branch 1.
Okay, I think that was his
But
question.
I know when we do exam development, we exclude educators and people who provide classes.
That's a
This
shame.
process, we don't want all the SMEs to be from the educational area of the practice, but we are developing, what we're doing is writing a description of the scope of what the work is to be done, the tasks that they perform, and the knowledge that is necessary. And it's a collaborative process, a group process. But we won't be writing any test questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate that. Are there any other comments or questions on this agenda item? Hearing none, thank you very much for your work. Okay, so updated and possible action on pretreatment committee recommendations. So I'm going to take this one. The pretreat committee has not met since the last board meeting. We recently reached out. We reached out to the pretreatment committee to ask if they wanted to continue. Not everybody said yes. There were some people that said no, including the pretreatment committee chair. So trying to find that person to replace, to be replaced with somebody else has proven to be a little more difficult than I think I had anticipated. And then also getting a well-rounded committee is a bit more difficult than I anticipated on this. So at this point, we don't have an update because the committee has not met because it is an incomplete committee. So it's, again, we're continuing to work on it, but it is slow going. Are there any comments or questions on that from the board? It is disappointing. It is disappointing, and in fact, some of the people that I've reached out to that had expressed interest before, or we would think would have a vested interest, have actually turned down some of their participation in it. So I think, and some of the interesting thing is some of the comments I've gotten is we've been talking about this for so long and it hasn't gone anywhere. And so the people that have participated in before, that I would think would have wanted to have said, well, it obviously didn't go anywhere the last 2 or 3 times we talked about it, so it's not going to go anywhere this time. So that is disappointing. That is disappointing, but we will continue to move forward with it. Any comments from the public on this? Okay. So research advisory panel research request. And so I know that there is some things we need to take a look at. So if Susan or Sabina wanted to specifically look at what we needed to be addressing here as a board, because it's not approving projects. The timing on that was genius.
Am I good?
Yes.
Sorry. So the research advisory panel met 2 weeks ago, and they wanted to. Their goal was to review all the criteria for the research for the request for proposals. Kind of make sure they went over what they decided previously in October of 2016, which was the last time they met to review the 2010 RFP. And they made one adjustment that they would like to recommend to the full board for approval. Am I getting this right? So you had a handout at your seat today, and I'm sure it's on the back panel, back counter. Under A, there is one sentence that's underlined, and that is what the panel is recommending to amend and add into the language for the current RFP that DCA will be working on. And that's that the Structural Pest Control Board is soliciting proposals from educational research institutions in California with scientific research history focused in the field of structural pest management.
Excellent.
And that's what's before you today is their recommendation. You're free to amend, adopt, accept that recommendation, and then say you, whatever you choose to do with that language today, then DCA will use that, incorporate it into their or RFPs.
Okay. So, do we have did everybody get a chance to take a look at it?
I don't see where
It's just, it was sitting
back panel.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to ask for a motion. Anybody want to make a motion to accept the recommendation?
I would like to do that, make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
So moved.
So discussion? Mike Duran. So do we have discussion on accepting this recommendation? Any discussion from the public? Okay, let's call for the vote.
Okay, Darren Van Steenwyk,
Yes.
Dave Tamayo,
Yes.
Rhonda Brand. Absent. Mike Duran,
Yes.
Curtis Good,
Yes.
and Servando Ornelas.
Yes.
Excellent. So now, like Sabina said, we'll be able to, now the DCA will incorporate that into their RFPs. So it will go,
Correct.
so it will be going out. And so would you be able just to briefly describe the kind of the timeline moving forward?
I'd hate to speak for other divisions.
Oh,
I can't speak to any of their timelines, unfortunately. I think though in the panel meeting, he said summer?
In the research advisory panel meeting we had teleconference last week, Bill, I don't recall his last name. Bill is the contracts manager. He was on the teleconference with us. He sounded positive that we would have the proposals out to the researchers by June 30th.
okay. So, because I know it was mentioned earlier, and please cut me if I'm not allowed to say these things, but one of the this board shares the frustration in how long this has taken, but as it was described, we cannot speak for other divisions and departments and people that are influencing, driving or not driving this specific action that this board would like to take.
Right, but we do have Bill and as well as another analyst will be working on it, and they're prepared to work on it once given direction.
Okay.
And they already have a draft kind of in the works, so they're already kind of ahead of the game.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah, because that's yeah, it was mentioned before. So.
Correct. So they're well aware.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
I think it would be helpful if when we do proposals like this, that we get sort of a predictable timetable that we work towards, so that anyway, but probably maybe that's off the agenda, but we can talk about it.
I can only say that typically in the RFP, there will be a time frame about the process. And I know you might be referring to the time frame of when that might be ready to send out to the researchers, but there is a time frame provided for the researchers in the RFP about when they believe, how long we accept the proposals, and then how long it takes for decisions to be made. That is provided.
I'm talking about sort of our own internal thing of when we do that. So,
And we can definitely update you once we get that information.
yeah, so great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next item, discussion and possible action regarding unlicensed performance of termite inspections by home inspectors. Susan, this has been on the agenda for a couple years now. Wait, sorry, not a couple of meetings.
A couple of meetings.
Okay.
I think this was something that Bill, Mr. Gaither, you wanted to speak on?
Okay, so please.
Again, Billy Gaither, licensed operator, branches 1, 2, and 3, and actively engaged in WDO inspections, mainly in Solano County. I want to talk to you and present to you some evidence of unlicensed activity not necessarily termite inspections performed by home inspectors, but rampant unlicensed activity when it comes to these home inspectors doing their job.
Sir, can I interrupt you? I just want to make sure we're not going to talk about any specific operators or licensees or cases.
No.
Okay, great,
No.
thanks.
Can I talk about a specific home inspector's report?
If it's going to come before the board in a potential enforcement case, I would caution you no.
I don't know if it will or not, but it lends credibility to my what I'm going to talk about.
If you can talk in more general terms.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have a report that's dated February 22nd, 2018. This has been going on years before this, and it's becoming worse all the time. This particular home inspection.
Excuse me, it sounds like you're going to get into details about a particular case, which we're asked not to do that. And I just kind of want to, the reason for that is if it comes before us.
Yes, it may color your decisions, I understand.
So.
Okay, gotcha. I'll talk in generalities. A lot of home inspectors are identifying dry rot, fungus conditions, rodent conditions. I have personally seen home inspector reports that have a specific part of the report that is it says it's titled WDO Inspection Findings and Recommendations. Okay? Generic enough for you, Mr. Tamayo? Thank you. I responded to a report last July after I had done my inspection. The home inspector had made a note in his report for a finding of subterranean termite pellets. Yes, yeah, Curtis. And Mr. Duran and Mr. Van Steenwyk know that this is impossible for you non-industry members on the board. Subterranean termites don't produce pellets or fecal pellets. Only the dry wood termites and the damp wood termites produce these pellets. However, I responded to the report because in that particular neighborhood, there is a propensity for subterranean termites, and I responded out of courtesy just to make sure that I didn't miss the subterranean termites. So I was given a copy of the report arriving at the property, and he identified the subterranean termite pellets.
Excuse me, you're giving enough detail that this is very much a specific case, and I'm just to let you know, I'm sympathetic to this should not be occurring, but you shouldn't be giving us specific details about
nothing to do with this, but okay.
A specific instance that you're bringing up.
Okay, I'm having to respond to unlicensed activity such as that. Whenever I'm out doing my inspection and these home inspectors show up, the first thing to do is they walk up with their ski poles and they start probing the eaves and the rafter tails. I don't understand how that falls under the scope of their report. I really don't. Other termite companies in Solano County, Sonoma County, Napa County, Lake County are experiencing these problems. And it's been going on, as I said, for a long time. We need the board. The board's a couple of years ago made an effort for an unlicensed activity, I believe, when it came to identification of bed bugs by unlicensed people working bed bug dogs. And they responded to that. I think they solved the problem. But we have an unsolved problem here with unlicensed activity. I don't know what the board can do other than if a specific incident is responded to one of your investigators, if they could respond to that, or if we could forward something on to Mr. Lucas, they could respond to it. Perhaps the board might consider writing letters regarding unlicensed activity to the certification people for the home inspectors such as Ashley and Korea and ask them to cease and desist with their members. Like I said, it's becoming a terrible problem. And we need some help. We need some help from the board.
I'm going to let council have.
I just have
respond
a
to this.
suggestion.
Okay.
That maybe this is something a subcommittee, like a technical advisory committee, could take a look at to do a little bit more research and see whatever that committee might do. I don't know if it's still a standing committee or who might be appropriate to look at this further to see if it warrants any further action by the board.
Okay.
Actually, I think this, to me, it seems like something that that our staff should be investigating to figure out how extensive is this. I don't think it's a matter of us having committee. I think, you know, with that we're getting allegations completely plausible to me that folks are working out or, you know, encroaching on things that they really should have a license for. I mean, that seems actually more likely than not. So I would like to see if we can have some sort of investigation by our enforcement staff, however we do that, and find, you know, I know we do stings, we do whatever, but doing that type of investigation to see how big of a problem is it and what can be done to mitigate that. Thanks.
Curtis?
Yeah, I really like that idea as well. Mr. Gaither, have you actually submitted that as a complaint to the board for actually unlicensed activity in a complaint?
I did in years past. I haven't recently.
Okay, I would recommend that you do.
Okay.
Because I've seen
specific incidences and paperwork.
Yeah.
I can
If
do
you
that.
have it, if you have it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
and
you have
submit it-
tangible,
Send it to Mr. Lucas.
there's a channel for it.
Yeah.
It would get in the right hands if you file a complaint with the
Okay.
board. And I would start there. That's the simplest place and probably the quickest and
And
simplest.
that would be on the board's complaint form. Okay. All right.
Yep,
I
absolutely.
can do that.
Yeah, and anything you have to substantiate would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. And, you know, it's getting to the point where we, the branch 3, have to go out and respond to these findings from the home inspectors and justify our reports. It's coming to the point where the realtors are lending more credence, and I'm saying realtors in general, not specific, are lending more credence to these home inspector reports than they are the actual professionals who know about this and have an education on it. And it's becoming a problem. And it's not just my little area in Northern California. It's statewide, because I talk to people statewide, and it's a problem.
Yeah, I think filing a complaint and then as unlicensed activity is a good place to start, and the board will kind of take it from there.
Okay.
Are home inspectors licensed by DCA at all?
They're
Okay.
not licensed by anyone.
All right.
But they could have other licenses.
Right.
A lot of times it is a contractor or somebody else, but
Right.
many
They
of
could
them
hold, some of them do hold contractors' licenses, some of them hold structural licenses.
Yeah.
But in performing a home inspection report, there is no
requirement.
licensing requirements by the state of California.
I want to say thank you for bringing that problem forth. It's even happening to me. And you say that the realtors are showing more authority to the inspection that they do. Because I found termites in the inspector. She said, "Oh, you can't have termites in that job, Mr. Duran." He says, "My person that did my home inspection said there was nothing there, was free and
But,
clear."
Mike, I'm apologize, but I'm going to cut you off for the
That's
same
all right.
reason why Mr. Tamayo was cut off.
You're always going to do it, but it gets to the back of my neck here, just to see this happening. But yeah, I understand that. But thank you very much for coming forth.
And as
Appreciate
I
that.
told Mr. Van Steenwyck the other day, I'm very passionate about this, and I apologize. I went off track, and I apologize, but this is a big thing. And I'm at the end of my career, in the next couple of years, but it's been going on for 15 years minimum. And we need to take care of the guys that are out there that are starting their businesses, that are trying to maintain their businesses. And we need to give credence to this industry with the real estate industry. And they need to stop depending on the home inspectors for their WDO information.
I would like to make a suggestion, and I don't mean to put it on to industry members, but it seems to me that every time you run across something that's got on a piece of paper that says, you're from a home inspector that says they discovered whatever condition that is properly only written down by our licensees, that if you can obtain a copy of that and submit it to the board for enforcement, because every single one of those, that's right there. If they put it down in writing, that's evidence against them. So
unfortunately, these are not public records like our inspections are. And if the parties involved in the transaction won't give me a copy, I can't get it.
So we'll have to deal with it.
Yeah.
We will see how this thing flashes out.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is it comments? Yes?
I just filed a complaint against a home inspection company last week. I am a home inspection company. I'm also a licensed operator in Branch 2 and Branch 3. California Real Estate Inspection Association, CREA, is our state association. We self-police ourselves. I can't tell you how many of the conferences, the monthly meetings where we go in and we tell new home inspectors, you do not put wood destroying organism or moisture damage in your reports. There's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And the way to do it is to help your termite inspector. If you're there and you're on the job and you see something that you think should be on the wood destroying organism report, you go to the termite inspector and you let them know. Okay? You're not trying to hide anything from anybody, but for the California Real Estate Inspection Association Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice are written in 7195 Business and Profession Codes. Okay? I can't tell you how much the association tries to make sure that everybody does this correctly. Now, there's another inspection organization out there called InterNACHI. They are from out of state of California. They are a national inspection association. They do not have the same standards of practice as CREA does. Now, I'm a member of both CREA and ASHI. I'm a master CREA inspector number 66 for the state of California. Been doing this for 20 years. In our reports, we try not to mention anything about wood destroying organisms, and that's the way it should be. We're there to do a visual inspection. So if you see a home inspector and he's got a probe, that's something that should be mentioned to him right away. Okay? CREA Association will work with the board as far as getting word out to home inspectors if that's what the board would like. I can speak to the powers that be at CREA. I can do the same thing with ASHI and InterNACHI and get the information out there. The problem is InterNACHI has come up in the last couple of years, and InterNACHI, not being a California entity, they're based out of Colorado, actually teaches in their classes that to do additional inspections. So you go out and do a home inspection, you sell them a termite, you sell them a radon, you sell them a microwave, whatever it happens to be, that's how they make their money. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do as members of the CREA Association to make InterNACHI more like CREA. The CREA standards are those standards that apply to California, and everybody else has their own standards and they vary from ours. So I just thank the board for taking the time to hear me today. That was the whole reason I came up from Orange last night. was basically just to come into the board and say, if you guys have a committee that wants to investigate this or do something about this, CREA will work with the board.
Mr. President, I think it's totally appropriate that this board maybe direct staff to write a letter to, I apologize, your acronym for this association, no, that you,
CREA?
CREA, to maybe some way notify them, write them, and that they have licensed, or not, they're not even licensed individuals out there that are crossing lines and maybe performing unlicensed activities, that we find some language to maybe make them aware. And I would still advocate that you report this complaint if you have something tangible, because I think the board would definitely act on that. But I think it would be totally appropriate for them to remind them that they are performing unlicensed activity. Do I need a second on that? Or
Yeah,
that's all right?
can we-
Do we need a motion on that, or you're good?
I don't, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, yes, sir.
I would suggest you include all three of the accreditation companies that he referenced, ASHI, Korea, and the International. Okay, thank you.
And the board can just also maybe put, well, just a notice on their website too, and maybe, I don't know if you have a frequently asked questions section about unlicensed activity, or just a reminder out there too, so that education and outreach.
Right. Now, there are several companies out there that are home inspection companies that do own a termite company also. In our CREA standards of practice, it says that if we are there to do a home inspection, we're not supposed to be selling ancillary services. We're not allowed to do any work on the property for 1 year after we do the home inspection. So some of these companies, even though they're licensed as branch 3 wood destroying organism, they're doing the home inspection and the termite at the same time. I don't have a problem with that as long as they disclose all that to their clients. Okay, the ones that like he was saying, and the one that I had to put a complaint against are companies that are simply home inspection companies that are not licensed in termite pest control.
And I'm sorry, when you said you filed a complaint, did you just file that with your association? Is that how you address this complaint?
Filed it with the structural pest control.
Oh, you did? Okay, thank you.
And what the structural pest control board did was write the.
No, don't speak about it. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for your time.
I'd kind of like to put a time frame on getting a report back on sort of the initial findings by staff of what it is, and maybe an outline of what you plan to do about it. I realize that you can only do so much in a few months, but just to report back and how this is going to be, what you found, and what the approach is going to be moving forward. And do you think that would be reasonable to do that by our next quarterly meeting?
Right. I'll
Yeah,
just put on the
great.
agenda for July.
Terrific, thank you.
And I don't know if it's appropriate, and I don't need to speak on our realtor on the board, but is this something maybe we should send to CAR as well, reminding their trade association that home inspectors shouldn't be identifying these other, maybe the same letter can be sent to all 4 agencies, or to CAR and then to these trade associations.
So we're actually going to use that as a transition. And I'm sorry, any last comments on this?
I have one.
Okay.
Why can't this be treated as unlicensed activity and have the board inspectors go out?
They will.
It
They
can,
will.
if there's a complaint.
Okay.
I need a complaint.
You'll have one already. I think you're going to have 2. Thank you.
Real quick, as I stated a couple years ago, you sent out that letter to industry regarding unlicensed activity with the identification of bed bugs and dogs, and you made it very clear that you were going to act on this. At some point, perhaps you could send a similar letter out to the branch 3s asking for this information to help you better understand what's going on out there, and perhaps you'll get more data on the problem and see how widespread it is.
Yeah, thank you. Any more comments? Very good. So talking about this, I'm going to use this as a transition to the next agenda item, which is future agenda items. So we have one already, but anything else we'd like to make sure that we address on the next agenda? It will be a quiet meeting then. Okay.
Yeah, well, I just want to reiterate that we are going to be looking at potentially being more predictable about how we do our research RFP. So, but I think council said that she's got that on our agenda. Is that correct? Okay.
Anything else?
I have a, on the soil pre-treat committee, was most of the members from Northern California, or were there some from Southern California?
There was mixed.
Because I would like to submit my name to be on that board if possible.
Very good.
I have one. It's kind of been a burr in my saddle for years, and the renewal process for our licensees is where, and it frustrates me so much, is where they have to sign under perjury and penalty that, you know, validating the hours. And of course, everybody really does not know what perjury and penalty, and we have so many of these licensees coming before the board and accusations and then these audits. I would like to see our board reach out to DPR and their filing process for licensees with DPR, that form that they use is quite a bit different, where you actually go through the mundane task of filling out what hours and everything you had. I would like to have direct staff to come back with that information in the next board meeting to maybe look at reevaluating how we renew our licensees, their form at least.
Okay, will do. I told you I have a meeting with DPR on this coming Wednesday because they want to look at our processes for processing renewals.
Great.
So I'll ask them to bring their renewal forms as well.
Excellent. Anything else? How about the public? Anything else you guys want to see on the next board meeting in July? Okay.
Just for consideration, the fact that we might have a ruling in May regarding the whole insulation.
I'm sorry, Kathy, I can't hear you.
Come to the mic, please.
No. I was about to wait before.
Kathleen Boyle, Structural Pest Control Board. We deal in the enforcement unit with lots of questions about insulation, especially with by branch twos.
Mhm.
There is a pending decision perhaps in the month of May. And just for consideration for board members and perhaps for outreach to branch two industry of having a topic regarding insulation, licensure, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. That is definitely something that especially depending upon what happens in May, we can look at adding that to the agenda. Thank you. Anything else? Excellent. So let's look at the board calendar. So, Susan, so the next meeting is in...
So your next meeting is scheduled for July
Okay.
24th, 25th,
24, 25?
24, 25. We plan to be at the Claremont in Southern California.
Got a question about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was changed to a one-day meeting on the 26th. Correct?
That's my recollection. I
Yes.
was trying to charge my phone so I could check, but
Right, Dave?
yeah.
The July meeting was changed to a one-day meeting on the 26th. Because I think we had a few conflicts. So, okay, so we have a one-day meeting on the 26th, Southern California, Claremont. I'm assuming that meeting will start at 9 o'clock and be for the day. Next, we have October, so we'll be back in Sacramento here, October 16, 17. Then we have January and Claremont and the 15th and 16th. Is everyone good with those dates? Okay, so then
You
we'd be
have a problem with it?
looking, I'm sorry?
Yeah, well, I guess he has a comment on,
No, I don't have a comment.
on the October, you won't be able to make October 28th? October the 2018?
Tuesday, Wednesday stuff for me. We'll adjust.
Okay.
Okay, then we're being into April of 2019. Dave has calculated off the days here for you to reaching 100 days from our previous meeting in January. So as long as we have the meeting scheduled by, if we want to stick with Tuesday, Wednesday, then as long as you scheduled by the 23rd or 24th, that's probably PCOC Ledge Days next year.
Yeah, which is going to be the Tuesday, Wednesday. So having it second half of Wednesday into Thursday would help up here.
Okay, which week, Darren?
I don't think I don't know of a specific date they have. Yeah, based on especially this consistency with this set, the 17th, 18th would.
That's what I was thinking, probably the third week, right?
Yeah.
Probably the third week. Okay, so you'd like to do afternoon on the 17th and morning on the 18th?
If possible, yeah.
I know that I have the similar problem that I had
This meeting?
This meeting where we adjusted this one to the afternoon because I know that I will have a Monday or Thursday morning meeting on the third Thursday. So
Okay, so how do we want to handle that? Should we look at the second Thursday? What do you think? Is that too early?
If folks are open to doing it in the afternoon, similar to the way we did it this way, I realize it's an inconvenience, or the other is, hopefully we'll have, if I'm the only one, then, and we have sufficient board members to come, then I could miss a meeting, so.
I think it's too late.
I understand that waiting until Thursday afternoon is an inconvenience for everybody else.
Let's I say let's because we're also talking about incorporating scheduling around PCOC, and they don't have their dates yet for those.
Okay.
And so let's put it on the calendar for the 17th, 18th, and then we'll kind of figure out as it gets closer.
As we get a little closer.
Yeah, because PCOC should actually have that scheduled probably within the next week or two.
Okay, and we really don't need times right now as far as 9 a.m. or 1 p.m., just as long as we can narrow down the dates, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so April 17, 18.
Excellent. Is there any public comment on that agenda item? Okay.
I got one small thing that I would like to say. I apologize to you, Darren, for sort of jumping in on a couple of items where it was actually your thing, and I apologize that I usurped your role. So,
thank you. So, thank you guys all very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Well, we're going to close. Oh, we're not?